Yo, what's up, guys? So today I'm bringing you another one of my discussion videos. In the background, you're going to be seeing my dual circle tournament match against Amber Ravensong, which a lot of you guys know from the community discords. So just some gameplay in the background as I get into my main topic. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. I'm not going to waste any time. Uh, as you guys know, about a week and a half ago, there was a huge gear update regarding max PvP, especially that kind of shifted up a lot of the meta. And today I'm going to be discussing that, especially with some of the sockets, which is kind of the biggest change. Every school has viable stats now, but you've seen a lot of changes to what sockets people are running, what wards, stuff like that. So I'm gonna get straight into it. So one of the biggest upsides with this update was, defensive schools like Storm and Fire could be able to get perfect accuracy without sacrificing, all of your other stats, which is awesome. We're now seeing people being able to run item card sockets on their themes and their decks, which is, something I've been pushing for a long time. So I'm super happy to see that, except for the fact that there's really no viable triangle sockets, as opposed to how it used to be. You used to be able to run Earthquake and Shift and stuff like that because, you needed those spells. But now Shift is outdated. Earthquake you can pack inside for 85%. You really don't need it. Other than Enfeeble and then the Maycast, Aura Jewel, which is pay to win because it's only in jewel packs, all you're really seeing people run are these bubbles, which is pretty standard on every school. The only school that really gets shafted on this, I think, is Balance and Death because you don't really have the good damage bubbles for that. But yeah, we saw, with the last update back in last spring, they're trying to push out dual schooling a little bit more. But the problem is you cannot get viable stats enough for dual schooling. If dual schooling was a viable option, you'd see people, running universal accuracy or school accuracy in those triangle slots, but you're not really seeing that. So, a couple of suggestions I had specifically was maybe give, multiple copy item cards. So maybe on my life, instead of socketing a sanctuary jewel, I could socket like 3 or 2 max tier goat monks or something like that, kind of switch it up a little bit instead of just being forced into running bubbles. Or you could rework the old shadow jewels, which we saw back when shadows came out, that right now they're only sitting at like 2% shadow, but maybe you can tone it up a little bit more, maybe make it 8 or 9 to suffice to the current meta and how it is now, because a lot of schools don't have shadow because they took it off of all the Aeon gear. So being able to supplement that onto your theme instead of just running extra bubbles, because the whole point of the bubble audit was so that every school wasn't just bubble every round and the person who won bubble won the game, and that's been good. And now recently they're trying to force people into running 8 bubbles. So if you're on a school that can't counter healing very well, maybe you run 4 dooms, or maybe you're on a balance and you carry 4 fire bubbles for hydro, or stuff like that. And we've seen a lot of these things being changed recently because schools are running upwards of 7 bubbles for their own school, because you can run 2 damage bubbles on sockets, and then you can run like a pet that gives a bubble, like Life has the Leaf Foot, Ice has the Blimp, stuff like that. And I mean, Ice can get upwards to 8 main deck bubbles, not on top of the fact that they can pack 5 hidden bubbles. So you really are seeing it go back to how it used to be, which is what they're trying to avoid, where every school is just bubble 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 bubble, and then whoever wins bubble wins the game. So more triangle socket options would be nice. So I'm going to get straight into the next point, which is, of course, going to be betrayal and delusion. Now, as most of you guys know, these spells currently give universal 40 traps, which, as you guys know, in a meta where every school has 180 damage upwards to, we're seeing a lot of people just absolutely just straight up 2-tap other people. Wait, because their buffs are so strong. So a couple of ideas I have for these is, take it back to how Rochambeau was currently intended to be when it came out, was that these Rochambeau cards are going to be used to set up trap gambits. So not only should every school, maybe have trap gambits or trap conditional spells to be able to use these spells, so they're not just useless, but tone the percentage down, like they did with Jin's defense. Jin's defense originally was 50% shields, along with like Wall of Blades and stuff like that, but they changed them to 25 so people would use them to set up shield gambits like Ice Scion or Myth Jin or Death Oni, stuff like that. And so that's kind of their only use now. You don't use Jin's defense really as a defensive move because the 25 shields are not that great. So turning Betrayal and Delusion into that, to where they're not just used as pure 40 buffs, but you're using them to set up conditional spells, would turn it into a really healthy spell that's not completely useless, because a lot of schools have trap gambits, and if you give even more of these gambit cards, which I think is probably the future of, arc mastery and spell writing, to where you're going to have some of these spells turn into trap conditionals, could be really healthy for the current state of Rochambeau, which is kind of in shambles right now. Not to play on words, but that's just kind of how it is. So next, I'm going to get right into the pets. Now, kind of circle back to my point earlier about how, you don't really need accuracy at pips on the Athame. You also don't need them on your pets, which, as you can see in this picture, is kind of turning the entire meta into who wards the most. So a lot of schools you're seeing are just straight up dropping Breaker and it's running triple ward, which kind of creates an issue, because as you can see on, schools like Storm, who sacrifice so much resist already for, extra damage, higher base damage on spells, stuff like that, you're seeing them kind of supplement those stats back because they're being able to triple ward. So you're seeing a school that's supposed to have, around 52 resist because of how high their damage is, to 3 schools or 4 schools, depending if they have the void boots, shield pins, you're seeing them have upwards to almost 70 resist, purely because you can just freely run triple wards now, which is kind of unbalancing the stats. It's like giving Ice 12k HP. They have higher HP, which they're supposed to lack damage, but because of the gear update, you're seeing Ices with 170 damage damn near, and still having 70 resist. So I think we should kind of move back to either nerf the pierce down so that people have to run, Breaker on their pets, or maybe, tone the accuracy down so they run sniper or stuff like that, and still give them the option to where, like, okay, if you want to run 2 triangle sockets, then you have to run sniper. You shouldn't just give everyone the world, in my opinion. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. You're seeing a lot of a setting in the current, queue system right now, which a lot of people have been complaining about, because there's really no reason not to run, ward and proof to Storm, because there's so many storms. Storm has always been the most played school, and you're seeing a lot of people just straight up set for each other, which is really unhealthy for the state of queue, and I know the devs know that. So, just bringing that up to light again, just so we can get a discussion around that. So I'm going to get to the next point, which is Shrike. Now, a lot of you guys know Shrike has been a thing since around level 110. So as you can see, it gives 50 pierce, 10 damage, and minus 25 outgoing. Now, we have seen a huge change in actual stat percentages compared to how it was when the spell originally came out, and there's been a lot of discussion around Strike over the past few years. But now since we're in a meta where damage is already so high and pierce is so high, I don't really see the point of having 50 pierce on a card like this. I think it should be audited down to maybe 30 pierce, and maybe increase the damage a little bit, or decrease. Take the damage off a little completely, leave the pierce how it is, and just use it as kind of a shield counter spell, instead of just having it as a pure glass cannon for any school type spell, because we've seen so much change in spells and stats themselves that we should see an audit on some of these old spells that are still being used in PvP. So now I'm going to get right into some of the other Rochambeaus that I see a lot of issues with. So as you guys know, we've seen a lot of people using other, like Fire, especially using FFA for strategies with FFA into Troll. But the issue is these strategies are usually completely destroyed by OT counters like Oni's Attrition. So I've seen a couple people touch base on this, but I'm just gonna kind of bring light to it, is that these spells probably need to be audited a little bit. So instead of just completely removing the overtime, maybe take it down 3 ticks, or reduce the damage by 50% or something like that, instead of just making all of the pips that you just wasted in this overtime useless, and then you kind of just get absolutely fucked by the weaknesses. Maybe make it to where you can still use the overtime to set up something. So like, for example, if I have Fire Elf, you can't just Oni's Attrition, put 2 weaknesses on me and completely destroy my my Gambit. Maybe I can still gen right away. It would be weaknessed, but I'd still have my Gambit. So that is something I've seen a lot of people complain about. And then into the last point that I'm going to be making is, very based around the actual Oni's naturalism, especially because we need to see more chromatic Rochambeaus. As you guys know, some of the Rochambeaus did get changed recently, and so I think that would be really healthy. And so don't pay attention to what's going on in the background. So I'm making the picture bigger. It's a little bit of drama, but making these, toning the percentages down a little bit, making them universal, I think would be really healthy for the meta. Maybe make them 20%. Every school can use this to kind of open up some strategy, so you're not just seeing everyone run the same stuff. So yeah, that is the end of the video. I appreciate you guys watching. If you guys have any other topics that were not mentioned in this video, please feel free to either DM me on Discord or drop them in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one.